Senator Nelson Aldrich's Senate hearings recommended a central bank to manage the currency of the United States in order to prevent such a panic from happening again. Aldrich was, of course, intimately connected with the various banking houses of the time, including J.P. Morgan, Paul Verge, who represented the Rothschilds, and, of course, the Rockefellers of Standard Oil and later Chase Manhattan Corporation, now J.P. Morgan Chase. Aldrich's bill was easily defeated because nobody wanted central bankers to have this monopoly on currency. Meeting on Jekyll Island in 1910, however, these men planned out what would become the Federal Reserve System.
I believe that the banking institutions are more dangerous than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive people of their prosperity until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered.
If all this information's out here, the people at the news say, but let me try to contact the newspaper and let them know about, whatever. So I'm sure people have done this over the past several years and come to the same conclusion. The problem is that we all haven't put our conclusions together and said, oh, we all realize this. And as soon as you need to do two things. You need to get the public to realize that they've been lied to. And you need to give them something constructive and meaningful to do out of that, right? You have to empower them and let them know that there is something you can do and you can make some sort of change, even if it's on a small personal $10 level or whatever. The idea is that we're not helpless. You found out, it may suck for a while, you come to terms with it, and figure out how to go forward from here, because this is what life's about.
This time, they helped fund Woodrow Wilson into power in 1913, under the promise that he would sign the Federal Reserve Act into law. The Federal Reserve Act was passed just prior to Christmas vacation, with the majority of politicians already home for the holidays. Thus, the bill was rammed through Congress and Senate with the skids greased, which is a term often used in legislative circles about laws passed with little or no oversight. Woodrow Wilson later realized his mistake.
I am the most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men.
The Federal Reserve, which isn't federal and has no reserves, is sold to the public as a stabilizer of the market. But that is in fact the opposite of the truth. In reality, their management of the US currency is a giant scam, fluctuating the money supply with surges and retractions, while no longer reporting how much cash is actually out there. They cause inflation and deflation, recessions and depressions, and manipulation of the people into taking on a debt that is now in the trillions of dollars. In 1920, another manipulated money panic shut down many of the smaller independent banks, allowing the bankers an even further consolidation of their power. On October 24th, 1929, the New York Stock Exchange experienced its massive crash that signaled the beginning of the Great Depression. In the time leading up to the crash, the banksters had quietly gotten out of the market and set themselves up cash heavy. The Fed then contracted the nation's money supply, thus creating deflation which caused runs on the banks and brought the Great Depression into full swing. With the crisis shocking the nation into submission, the Fed then claimed the need to fight the depression by forcing a gold seizure, which was passed as law. Roosevelt then put into action the New Deal, whereby the US would now be permanently bankrupted to the bankers, but the people would get social programs to take care of them, preventing a depression. Some would argue this also created the concept of dependency on the state, which is one of the key points of the Communist Manifesto. This is the origin of our modern social security or social insurance systems. While seeming to have the benefits of lifting us out of the Great Depression, the obligation to fulfill that benefit lasts to this very day. Since the Federal Reserve directs interest rates and money supply, their influence allows control of the direction of the economy. They are independent from government oversight, are never allowed to be audited, set their own policy, and run the IRS to extract further wealth from the people in the form of income tax, which is discussed later in the film.
It is in the newspaper from time to time. People are losing their farms, people are losing their homes because they're in debt to a bank. But what are they in debt for? There is no money. It doesn't exist. It's just a malicious game that's being played upon the people who live in this country. And if we wake up to it, the government should be in fear of the people, not us of them.
The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913, and it was entrusted with the power granted originally to the Congress by the U.S. Constitution to coin money and regulate the value thereof.
This is about Bernanke. This is about Bernanke. He has to be on that call. Forget the investors. The investors are going to do, if Bernanke needs to open the discount window. That's how bad things are out there. Alan Greenspan told everyone to take a teaser rate and then raise the rate 17 times. And Bernanke is being an academic. It is no time to be an academic. It is time to get on the Bear Stearns call. Listen, open the darn Fed window. He has no idea how bad it is out there. He has no idea. He has no idea.
Kramer.
I have talked to the heads of almost every single one of these firms in the last 72 hours, and he has no idea what it's like out there. None! And Bill Poole has no idea what it's like out there. My people have been in this game for 25 years, and they are losing their jobs, and these firms are going to go out of business, and he's nuts. They're nuts. They know nothing.
The Fed system is not good for the country or the world. They aren't even a government entity, but a private banking business with shareholders, which has been given agency status and legal authority by the United States, and even that fact of their legality is debatable. In summation, the Federal Reserve System is a giant fleecing of the American people, and all people. By manipulating the money supply, causing inflation and deflation and perpetual debt, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, who help control the Fed, now use the same problem reaction solution scheme that created the Fed in many third world countries. In order to exploit the people of these countries, banking interests support revolutions against the people and set up tin pot dictators, loaning them heaps of money at exorbitant interest, and then confiscating land and resources of the country when the dictator inevitably defaults on the loan.
Now it just says, and everybody can look at their bills today, and it says this note is legal tender. Well, it just means that it's recognized by the government and that it's accepted for taxes, so that's why we believe it has value, but it's only our faith in it.
As currency has moved away from being backed by precious metals to being backed by only nothing but faith, electronic currency has become popular, not only as a way to keep the game running much further than it was originally designed, but as a means of tracking the flow of money, in order to exercise even greater control over all financial transactions.
So let's just look at it. First of all, the Federal Reserve is anything but federal. It's a privately owned organization. Okay, and if you think that your money's safe in a bank, let me tell you how it works. Let's say you have $100 in the bank, all right? We know you got more, but for this purpose, we'll say 100. Now, the bank only has to keep 10% of that. In other words, all the money that's in that bank, they have to have 10% on standby all the time. So they only really have to have 10 of your $100. So then the money they get comes from the Federal Reserve banking system. And the Federal Reserve banking system needs to have less than 10% of that. So your $100 is literally worth less than $1 in hard currency. And in this country, we used to have a hard currency based on the gold. But what happened was they started to sell it off. People realized, hey, we can't sell off the gold or the money's not going to be worth anything. So what do? They started selling it off secretly afterwards. And actually, in World Trade Center Building 7, there was a lot of investigative documents pertaining to the sale of the gold from the Federal Reserve, and that case has been washed away now because there's no more evidence.